Hello, everybody. We are live. My name is Emma Lewzey. I'm at Blue Sky Philanthropy. I am joined by Rickesh Lakhani. He's the Executive Director at Future Possibilities for Kids. And we're going to be talking about using creative virtual events to engage your donors. So welcome, everybody, and welcome, Rickesh.
Thanks for having me here again, Emma. Appreciate it.
Yes, you're one of my most regular guests, so I think everyone is going to be in for a treat. You always have amazing wisdom to share. So before we dive into the specifics about your amazing virtual events, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the work you do at Future Possibilities for Kids.
For sure. We're what I will always call a small and mighty organization. Although growing, the term small shop can sometimes feel limiting, but we're small and mighty. We're working in underserved communities in the Greater Toronto area, working with children in their middle years, ages 9 to 12, and giving them a space and a platform to make real change in their communities while building their confidence and leadership. So they actually go out and achieve tangible community service goals while learning about the community around them, and in the process, just really understand that, hey, I can do big things. I can influence others. I can create awesome ideas and make a plan and actually achieve those goals.
I love it. And speaking of doing those meaningful things, I think you as a small but mighty shop have done some really powerful work in terms of using virtual events to engage your donors and further your mission both at the same time. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the specifics. I know there's two key events that you have had good success with. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about those.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to do this. And I will just preface this by saying we are not virtual event specialists. We are learning as we go, just like everybody else is. We really just had a certain approach to it, knowing our community, knowing what might resonate, and knowing that in the end, stories and connection are powerful, and even more important over the last few months with everything going on. So that was really the place from where we started. We said, what is our community normally, looking for and engage with? And then what would they be looking for now? And so that led to the creation of a couple of different things. One was something called the Possibility Room. And
Mhm.
this was a place where we call it a virtual community gathering, and we highlighted it had multiple purposes, which was good.
Mhm.
It gave kids a platform to share their ideas, because normally they would be doing announcements at school or doing presentations at an assembly, and they didn't have that opportunity. So now they have a platform where a few dozen people, we had up to I think almost 100 at one point in one of these
Wow.
possibility rooms, so they could actually share their goal and it's of course something where like, well, there's no privacy issues here as long as the parents are on board, we're okay.
Mhm.
Let's invite anyone who wants to join and not just share it with our donors, but anyone who's looking for hope and connection and a positive message. We weren't really seeing a lot of that with everything going on. It was all like doom and gloom, and totally understand why. It was like we need to do something a little bit different, and it turned out to be something that was quite fruitful. We did about 3 of those so far.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And so what kind of feedback have you been getting from folks about the Possibility Room so far?
Sure. So what it really was like me kind of, I guess, emceeing it, and then we had a couple of volunteers and a few kids speak. I think what we heard from anyone who we invited, and by the way, we went back through our books and invited like past board members and past key
Mhm.
supporters. It's awfully difficult to say, come out to this event. It's harder. Whereas now it's like, just pop in for half an hour. That's all. It was purposely half an hour to keep it kind of quick and energizing when people are busy. And the feedback we got from everyone was like, wow, like, thank you. It's amazing to see, what the kids are doing in response to everything happening in the world. Oh, am I
Mhm.
frozen? Are we okay?
I'm okay. Are you okay?
Okay, yes, we're good. So in response to everything, it was inspiring to see what kids were doing to reshape their goals and rethink their goals,
Mhm.
and also people who had never really experienced us before. We had some new folks that were just sort of in the where people we were talking to about FPK. They got to actually see and experience it almost in a real way that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Mhm.
So it really created a lot of opportunities. And the feedback we got, I mean, one thing is that one uh, donor who had given was thinking of giving to us, and then they came to a possibility room, and it ended up being a very large donation. And this was a new donor, so this was like, this brought it
Wow.
to life. I get it.
Wow. Well, it makes sense. And I wanted to go back to something that you said I really like around the idea of it being like an easier commitment right now. One of the silver linings I feel like of using more virtual events is that suddenly we are able to ask our donors to make an easier commitment than, say, coming for an in-person one-on-one meeting, which is like a really big commitment. You can make that mission connection virtually, which it sounds like you're doing an amazing job of, and you're also seeing many, great results at the end of the day, not least of which is a big gift from a new donor. All right, so I see we have some folks commenting. If you have any questions for us while we chat, please go ahead and drop them below. We'll go ahead, we'll make sure we try and answer as many of those as possible. So if you are watching, thanks for watching. If you're catching up on the replay, I would love you to drop the hashtag replay below so we can say hello. So go ahead and ask any questions you have for us. And I'm going to keep going to ask a little bit more. Oh, yes, and let's actually talk about the second event as well. I don't want to only focus on the possibility room. Well, that's been successful. You've also done a second event. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. The possibility room was sort of net new activity in terms of something that we created to connect kids and parents, and initially, and then the community overall. And it's important to note that neither of these were actually fundraising events. These were not virtual events that moved, or fundraising events that moved from a physical to a virtual space. This was by design just something that was a programming opportunity, which we moved virtual. The second event was more by necessity. We normally would have a graduation event where we have 1,000 people would have come through the Ontario Science Center and for our graduation event, and we would totally invite donors and elected officials and whoever else is in our polls that we want to engage and say, here's a chance to actually see the good work that's been happening with your support and to help you learn more about it. And of course, when this all happened, when we made the very painful decision to eliminate one of my favorite times of the year, which is Pop Fest, where we celebrate everyone who made it possible: donors, volunteers, kids, parents, family, staff, and full credit goes to my staff on this one. I really can't take much credit. They rethought this whole event, and it is a core principle of ours, is possibility thinking. Look, we can't go to the Science Center. What can we do to create a virtual event experience? And we can't replicate all the components, but we had to really sit down and think about what are the assets we have, and what are the things that are that make the experience special, and how can we maintain as many of those as possible so it doesn't feel like we're just taking a bunch of things and putting them onto a website. So we knew that one thing was the feeling of recognition. So we had a landing video which recognized and spoke to all of our sort of key stakeholders, with our staff sort of piecing together a video. We had a page for each kid and kid coach pair. So these kids are partnered with a kid coach during the program, and they actually showed, they had a few words to say about each other which were on the website. And then we also, if the kids had sent us any videos or content about the tangible, like, hey, I did a park cleanup, here's a picture of all the garbage bags we picked up. So it was like, you would see those when you go to the event normally, you'd see those goal displays. So this was a chance to replicate. And then the other piece we did, which, technology, which is probably something we're going to talk about, is virtual events, maybe do your technology. And we actually had a live stream where we had myself, a couple of key volunteers, and 4 kids that were lined up to speak, and we were doing a live stream to YouTube, something we'd never done before. So you are taking some risks. And with 5 minutes remaining to go, I kept getting all these messages saying, oh my gosh, we've been taken offline, and YouTube had taken down the stream for some reason, which we'll never know, and then they put it back up. But again, the feedback on that was quite incredible, and people were like, and the good thing is we were able to do that even if they weren't there live. Like, I had a lot of people emailing me saying, hey, I missed the event, I'm so sorry. I'm like, guess what? You go to the website, the recording is still up there, the goals are still up there. In fact, now we have more kids that send stuff in. So we're actually going to keep that website for PopFest going on for the next year. It could attract donors, volunteers, and even kids and parents into the program. So it led to something we didn't even really expect.
I love that. I love that. And I want to emphasize here, because, this sounds like a huge undertaking, which I'm not minimizing it. I'm sure it was a lot of work, but you are actually, as we said, a small but mighty organization. So you don't have a big team working on this. Like, how big is your team at this point?
So we including myself, it's a team of 8.
Okay, so you're not a huge shop. So, you were the beautiful thing about virtual events, I think, is this technology can be really easily accessible, even if you're a smaller shop. So yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for folks. And hello to Ken Mayhew. Thanks for popping in. I think this is a great opportunity for folks at smaller shops as well. We often think that larger shops, kind of are the only ones who have the resources to do things like this. But I think you have proved that otherwise. So, yes. Is there anything else that in doing these events, that you found surprising?
For sure. Well, let's just say it's a lot of new.
Yes.
Everything is new. It's new territory, new ground, new technology, new engagement opportunities. I think what was surprising for us was that the feedback we got, we had no clue in going into either of these things. I mean, the possibility
Mhm.
room was originally scheduled to be a one-time thing, and when almost 100 people showed up, and we got lots of great feedback, and people are saying, "I'm so glad you did this. Let's do it again." Then we knew that that was something that we wanted to continue. There was an appetite for it, so that was surprising.
Mhm.
I think for PopFest, what was surprising was just how amazing it all came together, and how much we were able to maintain those components of our programming and our donor engagement that were the things that made it special. So
Mhm.
I think it's definitely challenged a lot of our thinking about how we do things, and it's not to take away from how important in-person engagement is. It's just to say that there are ways that you can do things that, and because validated that for us, that all that work sort of paid off when we got such a good response.
I love that. And I love also the idea of possibility thinking, because I think I see a lot of fundraisers and nonprofits really getting stuck on the fact that a lot of what we depend on, like face-to-face meetings, is not currently available to us. So the idea of just being creative and implementing like really meaningful mission driven virtual events like you've done is a possibility, no matter what size your organization. And it can really work. I think you are proof positive about that, and it can have those beneficial side outcomes, which is not originally your main intent, of actually like finding new donors and inspiring larger donations. So that is quite amazing. So please go ahead and drop us any questions that you may have if you're watching right now. So I'm curious if we can get into kind of the people are often really interested in like the nitty gritty of the tactics. Like, can you talk a little bit about the kind of tools that you used, and if somebody's thinking of doing this, if you have any sort of recommendations to them around like specific tools that you were using to make these events possible?
For sure, for sure. And by the way, I do want to share the website, by the way. If people want to look at it, they can go
Yes.
to www.popfest.ca. That's popfest.ca, and that's a public site. Will be up there for a while. So, I mean, for example, we were like, okay, we don't want it to be feeling like just a page on our website. So the
Mm-hmm.
thought behind that from one of our team members who was leading a lot of the project was, we actually looked up the domain popfest.ca, which is the name of the event. So we actually use Squarespace, so it's like normally you would like, no, we can't have another site. We can't, but it's like it was much easier to do the kind of website we had done rather than trying to piggyback it on WordPress. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you may not do what you believe is ideal, or it doesn't fit in with what you're already doing. And that's the whole point of possibility thinking and breaking these molds, is we're going to have a separate website. We're like, well, what about directing traffic and all these questions that people would probably ask? It's like the important thing is that people come there and they feel like it's a separate space, just like you're stepping into something different. So even just typing in that website feels different. So that was Squarespace to create that sort of separate site. For the possibility rooms, we did just, Zoom was the obvious choice. And actually, I noticed that Zoom was making upgrades to their software over the last few months. I mean, they knew that everyone's using it. So I noticed a
Mm-hmm.
lot more features and tools that were working. We used Zoom webinar format because
Mm-hmm.
we needed to be able to spotlight speakers. We needed to be able to have people attend and watch, but not necessarily speaking or on the mic. We wanted to have the chatting. We used polls in Zoom, which was really something I think I encourage doing. If you're doing a Zoom webinar, do polls that relate to your content. And if you can, we didn't do this yet, but have your guests even ask the question, especially if it's like for us, it'd be so awesome to have the kids asking those questions. So we used a Zoom webinar format because
Mm-hmm.
it was a little bit more expensive, but it allowed us to really customize that whole approach and have people register, because we wanted to
Mm-hmm.
know who was coming when we're doing something where kids are on there as well. We needed to understand and track everyone who was there too. So it
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled a lot of our purposes. It may not be the best one. I've seen a few different Webinar Jam I've seen being used. I've seen a few others, and they all seem, to be honest, I think they're all decent. It's just knowing them and understanding their features is probably more important than the actual tool that you use.
Yeah, so you use pretty simple tools and they're pretty accessible. I think I use Zoom Webinar myself, and I know, I think last time I used it, it was about $40 for 100 seats. So it's like, it is accessible technology, no matter what size your organization is. And I always like to say about tech, I'm like, oh, if I can do it, you can do it too. I'm not a super high tech user, but a lot of these tools are really easy to use these days. Something like Squarespace, also, you have a really easy set of templates to set something up. So, I think we have more easily accessible and affordable tools for tech and virtual connection than we ever have before, which is really nice because it means that smaller shops can also get in on this action. And you did say your team is 8 people overall. I want to be clear, like your team is not your team is not 8 people in the fundraising department. Your team is 8 people at the whole organization, including yourself, your fundraiser, and your program folks, right? Oh, speaking of tech issues, I think we have maybe have a frozen Rickesh. Can you hear me, Rickesh? Oh, and I lost Rickesh. I'll wait to see if he joins us again. It's funny, just before Rickesh came on, we were doing quite a bit of troubleshooting around tech issues. So this is one of the fun parts when you are doing virtual events or broadcasting live video, is that you sometimes do have to deal with tech challenges. I think that's, yes, he's just trying to rejoin us now. So it's one of the pieces of advice I will have actually, is that as you experiment with using these tools, is just to relax a little bit and know that sometimes tech issues will come up. I had a webinar last week and my microphone gave out halfway through. Oh, here is Rickesh again. Hello, welcome back. I was just telling folks that an important part of virtual events is that you are going to sometimes have tech challenges. So I was saying the best thing to do is just relax and know that they're going to come and that they will resolve themselves. But it's quite funny. And I think no matter who you are and how experienced you are, you will have the occasional, you'll have the occasional little thing come up. So, and here we're back again. So I see a couple folks weighing in. Melissa says, love the idea of the possibility room. I want to say, I think this is a total steal, this idea, because, I think it's an idea that so many organizations can replicate. And Richard, hello, Richard. Thank you for joining. And Richard is saying, thank you for the wonderful and insightful conversation. So if you do have a question, for some reason, I can sometimes see your name and I sometimes can't. Speaking of tech, it's the platform that I'm using. So if I am not using your name and you're just showing up as LinkedIn user, my apologies. I'll make sure we hop on in afterwards and answer everything. So yes, so where were we? We were talking about, I think I was talking and you may have been frozen for longer than I realized. So.
Yes, I think I wasn't planning to use my phone originally, but it overheated apparently, which is a new thing I've never had happen before. So this is I think that was actually leading into something else. We're going to talk about the technology, and you were saying that, yes. I think last thing I heard was the tools are accessible, get to know them, understand their features. And yes, I think people at this day and age are being very understanding about tech blips. Yeah. I mean, whether it's kids walking in or whether it's, people being frozen or disconnecting, phones overheating now, there's a new one. I think it's just, I think people have a lot of empathy right now for because we're all living it. So I don't expect it to be perfect. In fact, the glitches I think almost make it seem a little endearing in a way. It's not that we want to have a bad experience, but I think people are like, oh, I can relate to that. That happened to me the other day. So I think just be gentle with yourself, especially if it's new to your organization and your staff who may not always be engaging in some of this technology. And it's just it takes time to learn it. And I mean, some of it can be offset by the things you would have been doing otherwise in a physical environment. So hopefully it's not, I trust me, I get the piece around being stretched and overwhelmed, and even learning technology can be overwhelming. And I think, but just understanding that it doesn't have to be net new. Like what, again, just like I always ask, and with my small and mighty shop colleagues, is what are you currently doing that you don't need to do? And I do believe the pandemic has created an environment where a lot of events that may not have been very fruitful have now just, oh, we can't do that anymore. And now is the window to sort of get rid of those, and they can be replaced with something like this potentially as well. The work that would have maybe gone into those events.
Yes, yeah, that is absolutely true. I know it is. It's a challenging time, but I'm just remaining optimistic about all of the, again, I'm coming back to possibility thinking, all of the creative ways in which our organizations are just meeting these challenges and figuring out how to connect with donors in a meaningful way that's really mission centered. And I just love seeing all of these ideas and how they're being enacted. So I just wanted to ask you, if before we wrap up, so we're hitting about the 20-minute mark, and please, any more questions, as I said, go ahead and drop them in. Even if you're watching the replay, we'll make sure that we keep an eye on things and pop in and answer any questions you may have. But do you have any more advice that you haven't shared yet for other organizations who are thinking of doing a similar creative virtual event to engage their communities?
For sure, and remember that again, this is advice is coming from what I'll say is like maybe 3 months experience with the virtual event space,
That's okay. That's okay.
which maybe is like, maybe it now makes me some kind of like intermediate level just based on trial by fire, I guess. But I have to still acknowledge we're learning. But I think that's one piece. Is just be gentle, acknowledge you're learning. I think in terms of what organizations decide to do, I mean, it really, there's no kind of cookie cutter thing. I think what's really important is to do that exercise that we had done, which is what are the assets we have, what is our mission, who are we serving, what is our purpose, and then honest, like this is totally transparent with you, the donor piece comes in last.
Yeah.
So it's in this case, because they were programming related, they were like, what's our mission? What do we need to do to serve? And how can we invite donors into it rather than let's create something that donors can come to? I just feel that wouldn't have been as pure of a process. So that's the way that we had done it, and it worked for us. It may not work for you. You may have to build that up front because not everyone is working in the same space of social services with children and leadership programs. You may have different communities you're working with. There may be privacy things to consider. There may be consent things to consider. And I think the main thing is to consider, is it it's not like it's being something that will continue to represent your community with dignity, and not being sort of, oh, now let's put people on showcase. So I think we were very mindful of how it sort of appears and the perception of it as well. I think that's real piece, is really what are your assets that you have as an organization? What is your community looking for? Who do you serve? And what is a creative combination of those things that can be delivered virtually and that we have the capacity to deliver, and then work out all the technology and all the how-tos. But if you feel like the why is strong and the what is strong, then you can figure out the how with these very capable and resourceful teams that I know exist at all these small and mighty organizations.
Well, that is great advice. Well, thank you, Rickesh. I think it's interesting, even though you feel like you're new at this and it's only been happening, for 3 months, you've got 4 successful creative virtual events under your belt. So you may actually, in fact, be among the more experienced folks doing this. So, because we're in a bit of a new world here. So I really appreciate you sharing your learnings and your expertise, and thank you for joining us. And thanks to everybody watching, joining us. As I said, if you are watching the replay, go ahead and drop the hashtag replay below. And if you have any questions, please make sure you include them below, because we'll be checking back in and answering any queries you have for Rickesh or myself. Hello, Julie. Thanks for joining us. And we're just wrapping up. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you, Rickesh. And we'll hopefully see you back here again soon. And actually, before we wrap, perhaps you can tell us the website one more time. So if folks want to check out some of what you've been talking about, or they're just joining us now, let us know where we can find your virtual events as well as your organization.
Sure. So if you go to fpcanada.org, in the news and events section, there is the reference to the possibility room. So you can actually see the language we used, and you can see some clips of 3 of the kids that had spoken. We're still adding more to that page. So it doesn't give you a full feel, but you can see the kind of how the recording will look and the language that comes out, or the discussion that comes out of that. And for the other virtual graduation event that we had done, it was www.popfest, that's P-O-P fest, like festival, short form, .ca. And actually, we even have a new program called Ready, Set, Connect, which is a virtual program. If you explore our site on the program side, you'll see what a virtual program could even look like. So again, we're learning, we're growing, but if anyone wants to connect directly and ask any questions, they're welcome to also connect directly with me.
All right. Thank you so much, Rickesh. Thanks for your generosity today. And thanks again to everyone joining us. We're signing off now. Bye, folks.
Thanks for the space, Emma.